You finally get the relationship you wanted, the job you worked years for, the body, the savings account, the calm you've been chasing. And then, without any clear external reason, you start pulling it apart. You pick a fight right when things are going well. You stop showing up the way you did when you were trying to get there. You find a reason to walk away from something that, on paper, was exactly what you said you wanted. If you've ever done this and then spent weeks asking yourself, why did I do that? This video is going to give you an answer that has nothing to do with laziness, fear, or weakness. By the end of this video, you'll understand the specific psychological mechanism that causes people to sabotage exactly the things they want most, why it has almost nothing to do with conscious choice, and the one internal number you need to change if you want it to stop happening. Stay until the end, because the last part explains why willpower alone has never been able to fix this for you. Let's start with what self-sabotage actually is, because it's usually misunderstood. Most people assume self-sabotage is about fear of failure. But that explanation falls apart the moment you look closely at the pattern, because the sabotage almost always happens after things start going well, not before. You don't usually destroy things you expect to fail at. You destroy things that were succeeding. That single detail rules out simple fear of failure as the real explanation. What's actually happening has a name in psychology. It's connected to a concept called the identity ceiling, an internal, mostly unconscious belief about the maximum amount of success, love, stability, or happiness that feels consistent with who you believe you are. Here's how it works. Your brain doesn't just track your circumstances. It constantly compares your current reality to your internal self-concept, your deep, often unexamined beliefs about your own worth, capability, and what you deserve. When your actual life rises significantly above that internal ceiling, your brain doesn't experience it purely as good news. It experiences the gap itself as a kind of error, a mismatch between the story you've always told about yourself and the story your current life is now telling. And the human mind has a powerful, automatic drive to resolve mismatches like that. Psychologists call this drive toward internal consistency cognitive homeostasis, the same mechanism that makes you feel oddly uncomfortable receiving a genuine compliment you don't believe, or that makes you instinctively downplay an achievement that exceeds how you privately see yourself. When the gap between your identity ceiling and your actual life becomes too large, your mind has two ways to close it. Either you raise your internal sense of what you deserve, which is slow, effortful, and requires real psychological work, or you lower your external circumstances back down to match the ceiling, which is fast, and which your nervous system can execute without you consciously deciding anything at all. Self-sabotage is your mind choosing the second option, not because you're weak, because closing a gap quickly feels safer to your nervous system than tolerating the discomfort of an identity that suddenly doesn't match your life. This explains something many people find confusing about themselves. The sabotage often shows up at a very specific moment, not randomly, but right around the point where things have clearly exceeded what felt normal. The promotion that finally arrives after years of feeling overlooked. The relationship that's stable and kind after a history of chaos. The financial cushion that appears after years of scarcity. Right at that threshold, the gap between what I have and who I believe I am becomes large enough to trigger the correction mechanism. And the correction often looks exactly like self-destruction from the outside, even though internally it's your mind trying to restore a strange kind of equilibrium. There's a second layer to this, and it's even less obvious. Your identity ceiling wasn't built by you consciously as an adult. It was built early, often in childhood, from repeated messages about what was realistic for someone like you, what your family modeled as normal, and what level of success or stability felt safe versus exposed within your specific environment. If stability was rare or unstable in your early life, a deep part of your nervous system may have learned to treat sustained goodness itself as suspicious, something that precedes loss, rather than something to simply enjoy. This is why intelligence, effort, and even genuine desire are often not enough to prevent self-sabotage. You can want something completely consciously, work for it skillfully, and still have an older, unconscious part of your psychology working quietly against it. Not out of self-hatred, but out of a misguided attempt to keep your internal world consistent and, in its own distorted logic, safe. So how do you actually work with this instead of just white-knuckling your way through willpower, which research consistently shows fails against unconscious patterns like this one? First, identify your specific threshold. Look back at any pattern of self-sabotage in your life and ask, specifically, what had just become true right before it happened? Was it a level of income? A level of being truly seen by a partner? A level of public recognition? Most people discover their sabotage clusters around a very particular kind of too much, not goodness in general. Naming that threshold precisely is the first step to recognizing it the next time you approach it. Second, practice tolerating the gap without closing it. When you notice the discomfort that comes from things going better than your old identity expected, resist the urge to interpret that discomfort as a warning sign that something is wrong. It's not danger. It's just unfamiliarity. The feeling of "this doesn't feel like me" is not the same as "this is unsafe," even though your nervous system will initially insist they're identical. Third, deliberately update the evidence file you keep about yourself. Your identity ceiling is built from accumulated evidence, much of it outdated. Each time you experience something good and consciously let yourself fully register it, instead of deflecting, minimizing, or rushing past it, you're slowly feeding new evidence into the same system that built the ceiling in the first place. This is slower than insight alone, but it's the actual mechanism by which the ceiling moves. Fourth, when you notice the urge to sabotage arriving, the urge to pick a fight, to withdraw, to quit right before the finish line, pause and ask one specific question. Am I trying to solve a real problem, or am I trying to make my life match an old idea of who I am? That single question, asked honestly in the moment, interrupts the automatic execution of the pattern just long enough for you to choose differently. Here's what ties all of this together. You were never broken for sabotaging the good things in your life. You were running a deeply old protective mechanism built to keep your internal world consistent, doing exactly what it was designed to do, just aimed at a target that no longer serves you. The goal was never to silence that mechanism completely. It's to slowly raise the ceiling it's protecting until your life and your sense of who you are finally telling the same story. If this explained a pattern you've experienced and never understood, tell us in the comments what too much looks like in your own life, the specific thing that tends to come right before you pull away from something good. And if you want to keep uncovering the hidden architecture behind your own behavior, the next video is right there, waiting for you.